So, does anybody in the audience use TensorFlow by any chance or have it embedded within your pipelines? Okay, cool. Large number of hands. So last week we had something called the TensorFlow Developer Summit. It was hosted just in the area in Sunnyvale. And we announced something called TensorFlow 2.0 Alpha. We had a nightly build that was available for testing before, but now you can try out this latest version, which has a little bit more in terms of support, but is still very much new and bleeding edge. So highly encourage folks to try it out. TensorFlow 2.0 really is all about usability and sort of developer productivity. So if you have familiarity with Keras, Keras is now embedded within TensorFlow as the sort of recommended default higher level API. You can access it with tf.keras. We have eager execution by default. So instead of saying tf.enable eager execution, it's automatically there for you. And the syntax is very straightforward. So instead of you having to write out about 12 lines of code in order to do a simple add op, you can just write it out and it feels very much Pythonic. For clarity, we've removed a lot of duplicate functionality that was extended throughout the TensorFlow API initially. So if you remember, we had multiple ways to do things. We didn't really have consistent naming conventions for endpoints. We had this thing called contrib, which was kind of a gigantic catch-all for everything that people in the community felt would be interesting to include in TensorFlow, but didn't necessarily have a support plan for. But contrib has been removed, the API has been simplified, and naming conventions have been made consistent. And it should also have compatibility throughout the rest of the TensorFlow ecosystem because you can export as saved model and use that for things like TensorFlow Lite, TensorFlow JS, so being able to use TensorFlow in the browser on servers, etc. And we also have flexibility. So I mentioned that Keras is the default higher level API. We also still have estimators. But if you want to go lower or if you want to subclass Keras layers, then you have that opportunity as well. So everything that you've come to know and love about TensorFlow is still there. We've just tried to make it a little bit more user-friendly and less of a struggle to get started. And always the question, how do I upgrade? So the potential sad face, right, is that your historic or your existing rather 1. Whatever scripts probably will not work with TensorFlow 2.0. But we've created an upgrade utility called TF Upgrade V2 that's automatically installed with each pip installation or each build. And to run it, it's really just as simple as exporting a Python file or a Jupyter Notebook file, running the script on that file. And then the script tells you sort of a detailed report, report.txt, where all of the API symbol renames occurred, the added keywords to specific functions, and then also some recommended changes if you need to make manual changes. Usually, if you've been using Keras, if you're on TF 113 or 112 right now, you probably won't run into very many issues. And once that's done, you should be able to run the script that you had exported just as easily as you would with TensorFlow 1.x. So if you have any questions, it looks like there's a typo, but it's github.com/TensorFlow community. We have a number of special interest groups. Ed is the expert and can tell you all about them. We also have a weekly migration support hour, which normally happens Tuesdays at 2:00 p.m. But not this week due to the Dev Summit and a conflict with the special interest group called Build, which is discussing a PEP recommendation. But if you have any questions about TensorFlow 2.0, if you've been trying it out and you've run into any snags, we do offer an opportunity to talk directly with TensorFlow engineers to help you get through those stumbling blocks. And that exists as a mailing list as well. So if you have questions, you can always just post them there. And that's it. So again, I'm Paige. I exist as dynamic web page all over the internet. And if you have any questions, I'm webpage@google.com. So thank you so much. I'm excited to see so many folks here talking about Kubeflow and interested in learning more about it. And yeah, deploy your TensorFlow 2.0 solutions. Thank you.